until we understand the Christ God waits.
Good morning and welcome to St. Andrews-Wesley United Church on this Orange T-shirt Sunday. We are so delighted that you all are here with us today. St. Andrews-Wesley is an open and affirming congregation, and we seek to maintain an open mind and an open heart that we may more fully live into the path of justice and peace shown to us by Jesus Christ. And in that way, we seek to be followers of Christ, to further the work of justice and peace in our lives and in the world. And we do this here on this corner of Nelson and Burrard that is part of the Squamish and the Musqueam and the Tsleil-Waututh territories. These are unceded territories and territories where these people have lived and worked and played and cared for the land for literally thousands of years. And so we are honored to remain in relationship with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. This will be a different kind of a service today as we honor Orange Shirt Sunday, leading towards the first National Day for Reconciliation that's happening this Thursday, September 30th. And we have a special event that will be happening here in the sanctuary at 2 o'clock this Thursday. It will be an unveiling ceremony of the house post and the information panel that will go in the narthex as part of our reconciliation wall. The ceremony will be Indigenous-led. It will involve a blessing of the house post and of the information panel. It will involve the blanketing of elders, the calling of witnesses, and Coast Salish drumming and song. There'll be some speakers, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, and we hope that you can come. You're welcome to be part of it. It would be helpful, however, if you register in advance by calling the office or going on to the website, just so that we have an approximation of how many chairs to set up and how many people we should be prepared to welcome. So we do hope to see you this Thursday. It'll be a national holiday, so that's why 2 o'clock in the afternoon seemed a good time to set the ceremony. We're hoping that you'll be able to make it. As today is we do this actually as a practice every Sunday. In 2015, Justice Murray Sinclair said that reconciliation is not an Aboriginal problem, it is a Canadian problem. It is a Canadian opportunity for us to enter into relationship in new and fruitful ways. And so, part of what he was encouraging people to do, and still encourages people to do, is to read through the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And so we have agreed to do that as a worshiping community. Every Sunday we will read one of the calls to action, and this Sunday we're on number 6. And so if we can see that up on the screen, that would be great. This is recommendation number 6 from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We call upon the Government of Canada to repeal Section 43 of the Criminal Code of Canada. Section 43 says that a parent or a teacher is allowed to use reasonable force in disciplining a child. And as you can imagine, that has maybe a little too much leeway and can be the excuse for there to be abuse of a child, either by a parent's hand or by a teacher's hand. And so many people consider Section 43 to be outdated, outmoded, and in need of some revision. And so yep, it was, and thank goodness Yeah, thank goodness, as I think you're indicating that we're in a different era now. And the regular abuse of children is just not acceptable. It's not the way that we find it fruitful to be helping to bring children on board and an understanding of how we can live and be together as a community. And so there are other ways that, in which we try and discipline children through love and care and not through physical violence. And so, yes, it was a way of the past. We really hope and pray that it is no longer a way today or in the future. We are so grateful to have special guests with us this morning to help us walk more intentionally into the path of reconciliation. And so I would like to welcome Sam George, who is an elder of the Squamish Nation. And many of you had a chance to meet Sam George at Granville Island when we were together for the House Post Eve carving event. And Sam is here with his partner, his wife, Michelle, who is also with us at Granville Island. And it's wonderful to see you both again, but also it's so wonderful to have you here for this day. And Sam will be sharing a little bit of his story as a survivor of St. Paul's Residential School on the North Shore. Sam's indigenous name is Siatzultuk, and we honor that name, we honor your culture, we honor your past, and we honor the person that you have become since that time. Sam has long been a cultural case worker with the Indian Residential School Survivors Society, and he has been an elder who has been in conversation with us and advising us in the Reconciliation Wall project, for which we are tremendously grateful for your guidance and wisdom. We also welcome Gertie Pierre here, who comes from Seychelles. That's such a beautiful way, Seychelles. And Gertie is also an elder and a caseworker for the Indian Residential School Society, and has been a support worker for the recent National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. So in other words, Gertie is well familiar in walking into the difficult conversations that need to happen today for healing to begin. And those are conversations not only to be shared by those who suffered, but also to be heard and held by the larger community. So thank you for being here, Gertie, to help us do that. And then we also have Bill Tate, who is here and rather famous amongst our congregation because Bill is the great nephew of Charles Montgomery Tate. And many of you would have heard the story of the Charles Montgomery Tate bronze plaque that has been in our narthex since 1940. Bill was baptized by his great uncle, Charles Montgomery Tate, at the Wesley Methodist Church before we were here in this building. And Bill was present as a 9-year-old boy, as a young boy, when the Charles Montgomery Tate plaque was placed by the city of Vancouver in our narthex, in our entryway. And it was a conversation around how are we now in relationship with this plaque that led us to the Reconciliation Wall through the fruitful leadership of Reconciliation Matters, Kaisa McCandless and Steve Zolnay and others. And thank you for helping us do this important work with intentionality and with grace. And Bill is here with his friend Petra and also with his nephew Bruce and Janine, who are here to support this event. So welcome to our special guests. As we walk the path of reconciliation, we do so as an intentional way of walking the path of peace. And so let's follow our young elder Ayumi this morning as we sign the peace of Christ be with you.
And also with you, and also with you. There once was someone who said such amazing things and did such wonderful things that people couldn't help but follow him. And they just had to ask who he was. And he said, "I am the light." And that light is within us, it surrounds us, and it is between us. Thanks be to God.
And we remember that God welcomes all, so let's sing. Good morning, and welcome, welcome. We have a very special guest with us this morning, and as she makes her way forward, I want to remind folks that we have a special dance coming up, one where we can move our body and we can share some food. And we're going to follow all of the COVID safety rules, and food will be served. It won't be buffet style, and we're going to have it spaced and distanced, and it's going to be a lot of fun for us to be able to come together. And that's happening October 9th, and the last day to get your tickets will be next Sunday, because we have to put the order in for food. And don't forget, Daniel and I are really excited about this silent disco. So you're going to get your own headphones, and you can choose from 3 music stations. We've got some live DJs. It's going to be a blast. So remember that. Next Sunday, last sale of tickets. There we go. Gertie, it is such a blessing and an honor to have you with us. So welcome. Welcome to our church and welcome to this space. And we are really blessed to hear from you this morning. And I understand that you're going to be sharing with us about your tradition of brushing. And I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Is this on?
Yes.
Is it? Oh, okay. Okay, each of you are given a piece of cedar to hold. And we've been using cedar for many, many years, for centuries, from our elders way back when. The cedar, when you hold on to it, it's a spiritual blessing that it's giving you. Like if you're going through a really hard time of grief or loss or anything that you're holding that's really negative and you want to let it go, the cedar will take that in. It'll take it away and it'll make you feel lighter. You have to believe in it, to believe in something that's going to give you that healing. It's going to give it to you. And cedar was used by our ancestors to help us feel, good inside. We use it to brush off, when we're doing any kind of brushing for, ourselves. We could do it with ourselves. I do it with myself at the creek. I go to the creek with my daughter, and I take 4 cedar boughs from a cedar tree. Before I take it, I tap tobacco, and I put it under the tree, dig a hole, and then put it under the tree to thank the cedar for the cedar boughs that I'm going to be taking for the cleansing of myself. And I pray to the cedar tree, and I thank the cedar for what I'm going to be doing, because I'm taking the 4 branches from the tree. And once I've taken it, I go to the water, and then I brush it in the water, and I brush it 4 times in the water. And then when I'm done doing that, then I take the cedar, and then I start to brush myself from head to toe, and then around my back, and from head to toe, and helping me with the work that I do, because I work for the Indian Residential School as a crisis line worker. And a crisis line worker, I was asked to do that once they start finding the children in the residential schools, the graves. So a lot of people were traumatized and affected by what was going on. So I do this work for, helping to get them through that time and offer the counseling that is available to them, because I have, on a sheet of paper, all the counseling that's across Canada. I even get calls from the United States, and they ask about, if I know if anybody is available for them there. And I just give them direction on how they can go about getting the help that they need. And cedar has been used by our people, many, many years, not only for cedar bough brushing, but we survived from the cedar. Our clothes was made from cedar. We had cedar clothes. We had cedar blankets in our longhouse. Our longhouse was made from cedar planks, and our bedding was made from the cedar. And our spoons, our boxes that they made, they weren't made with nails, they were bentwood boxes that were made into boxes. And we cooked with them. We went out to gather food down at the water, and it helped us in so many ways, and we had dugout canoes that our elders used to dig out. I remember my great-grandfather, my mom told me about him. We used to live way up in Jervis Inlet from Seashell. It probably takes you 2 to 3 hours if you were going to go up on a gill knitter, but by speedboat probably less. And then she said he would go out in the bush as soon as the sun was going to rise, and he'd go up and cut a tree down. And before nightfall, he'd have a dugout canoe made, a one-man canoe, so he could go out and fish and, provide for his family for food. So cedar is a very blessed tree in our area, because it's the way we survived a long time ago. So I was going to go around and just brush on the top of each of the children, because the cedar, you have to believe that the cedar is going to help you. If you got anything that you could be hurting from because you had a fight with your friend, or you had trouble, last night sleeping, or you had a disagreement with your mom or dad, and you want to let that go, and you want to be happy, and carry only good things in your heart and soul through the day, because if you believe in this is what it's going to do. I'm not going to touch you with the cedar. I'm just going to brush you around your head. Okay?
Thank you, Gertie. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gertie, for that beautiful, beautiful telling and sharing. And I don't know that any of us are going to look at cedar in the same way, so thank you very, very much for that. I wonder if you'd pray with me. Loving Creator, we give you thanks for this time and for one another and for all of creation. We thank you for Gertie and the love and compassion she lives and shares. Thank you for traditions such as brushing that connect us and deepen our understanding of you and how to be in this world. We remember on this and every day that every child matters. Amen. And as we leave for Sunday Club with that special blessing from Gertie, we always remember that God welcomes all, strangers and friends. Let's sing, let's go.
Thank you, Shane. And thank you, Gertie, for that leadership, that teaching. In a moment, Daniel will be reading a passage from Luke's Gospel, and it has a two-pronged teaching in it. The first is a reminder of the virtue of humility, that when we are in the awesome presence of the reality that we call God, that it's wise to remember our place and to approach that sacred space with humility. Otherwise, we run the risk of pretending that we have more power than we do, and that the sun sets at our command and the tides change at our command, which simply isn't the case. So the virtue of humility is one teaching. The reading continues then with a reminder that every child matters in God's eyes, and hopefully in ours too. Listen.
From the Gospel according to Luke. He also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and regarded others with contempt. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, was praying thus: God, I thank you that I am not like other people, the thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of all my income. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even look up to heaven, but was beating his breast and saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his home justified rather than the other. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, but all who humble themselves will be exalted. Another day, people were bringing infants to him that he might touch them. And when the disciples saw it, they sternly ordered them not to do it. But Jesus called for them and said, Let the little children come to me, and do not stop them. For it is to such as these that the kingdom of God belongs. Truly, I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will never enter it. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Sam. Ooh.
Oh, lots of people. Shukmah to each and every one of you. I thank you for being invited to this beautiful building. I walked by it how many times, drove by it. Never thought much of churches. A church played a big part in my, not the church, but the representatives played a big part in shaping my life on who I was and what I was and how I was. And I attended some churches, like for 5 minutes, but mostly at funerals. I would come in and see my loved one or my friend or whoever, family, look at their body, say goodbye, and go out and stand outside. And this is the longest I've been in a church now, for over 30 years. And I know I've met a lot of church people. You're all beautiful people because you're walking with your God, my God, the Creator. We all have a different name for him, but it's God. Once again, I am so honored to be here. But I share with you too the things that made me who I was. I always start off by, I thank you for acknowledging our territories and the people. I thank you for that. It's a great honor. And also, I always start off my story. I remember when I was very young, I look at children. I love children like all of us because they're a big part of our life. And it's so good when I can hear them laugh and get sassy and just be themselves, be who they want to be. But once again, I'm walking away from my story. I remember as a very young person, maybe 16, 18 months old, I remember my sister carrying me around. She's about 4 years older than me, and I was her doll. My mom and dad kept on saying, quit packing him around, he's not going to be able to walk. But, and she was just little too, and I was probably about half her size, and she would pack me and dress me however she wanted. but that's what she did. I had 3 older siblings and 1 young baby sister. And I played with my siblings a lot. My older brother, he's about a year and a half older than me, my younger sister. But I remember probably my second Christmas, I remember my mom telling us to go to bed. We all went to bed. She tucked us in. And in the morning, I was sleeping and I heard these very excited voices. And I got up and went to the end of the bed and looked around, and there in the corner was my siblings standing around this beautiful Christmas tree. And my mom and dad, while we were all sleeping, had brought in the Christmas tree and decorated and left the lights on. And I was just sitting there on the bed, kneeling there. My older sister looked over and seen me, came running over, picked me up, packed me, and stood me in front of the tree. I remember looking at it, seeing the lights bubbling and flashing on and off, and I didn't understand what it was all about. And in them days, they had candy going all the way around, top to bottom. I remember breaking off a candy, putting it in my mouth, and that's also my first recollection of candy. I always say I must have liked it because I can still hear my mom, Samuel, get away from the tree. I was like this, I guess. But that's one of the memories. My childhood, I remember playing with my older brother. We played around a lot and doing things. I remember going down to the beach, the inlet here in Vancouver. In front of our reserve, the tide went way out in them days. And Looked like you could almost jump in and swim across to Vancouver. But it was mud and sand all the way out. And I remember going down with my parents, my grandparents, my uncles and aunts, going down to the beach, and my uncles made a big, huge bonfire in the sand. And then my grandparents and uncles and aunts, mom and dad, they all had a stick like this, just a piece of stick. And they all took off their shoes, rolled up their pants, and we all walked out into the sand and the mud. And there was big puddles when the tide went out, maybe 2 or 3 inches deep. And they all lined up and they walked out, and they would all walk there, and somebody would put their stick down and flip it. Then a fish would go flying out, and all us kids would be screaming. We'd run and trying to catch it. We'd grab it, and one of our grandmas or somebody would put it in a big basket that she woven. And they'd keep on walking, and somebody would wiggle a stick again, pull it out, and there would be a crab hanging onto it. They would grab the crab, turn it upside down, put it into another basket. And when the grandmothers and aunties said, okay, we have enough now, we'd go back up to the fire, and everybody'd be talking, laughing, gossiping. And the thing about them talking, they were speaking in the Squamish Nation language. Nobody spoke English. My grandfather and grandmother spoke very broken English. I remember that. And they spoke English to us, so. And they also spoke our Squamish Nation language. And it was so good, you know. Everything they did, everything we did was in the Squamish Nation tradition and culture. They showed us whenever they wanted us to do something, they would do it. And they made sure we were standing there paying attention. And then they're like cutting up fish, and they would do it, and I thought I was helping, and my papa would say, watch your fingers. I don't want to cut your fingers off. And I'd go like that. But maybe after the second fish, he would give me the knife, and he would be standing there watching me. And us children would have to cut it. And that's how he showed us. And he showed us how to hang it up so it could smoke it or dry it, and how to put it on a piece of wood and hang it over the fire to cook it. You know, he never said, not like that, don't do it that way. He never ever hit us. He never ever raised her voice. And he just taught us by example. Everything he did, he was very soft-spoken. My Ta was very soft-spoken. Ta is grandma in our language. And she took care of us like she was our mother. And also like my mom. But anyway, being down the beach, they would bring the fish in, and somebody would separate the fire with their sticks, and there was sand under there. They dug a hole maybe about that deep, right into the fire, and they would grab the crabs, put it in there, then the clams, and then the fish, and bury it. Then the young men would pull all the fire over again, and we'd all sit around, and they put logs all the way around. And everybody sat down, and the Ta's, they brought a big pot with a handle on it and pushed it right against the fire and full of water. And everybody talked, and when the water was hot, some Ta would go up and put tea bags in it and then let it sit there for a little while, and miraculously all the aunties and Ta's would pull out cups with saucers, and the young girls would go around pouring tea into their cups, and they'd be still talking, you know, just like I'm talking now to each other in the Squamish Nation language, and laughing, a lot of joking, a lot of teasing, and a lot of gossip. And after a while, when the Ta's would say, okay, it should be ready, the boys would go get up and separate the wood, dig out everything, and they'd gotten cedar boughs, or cedar, the out bark, and that was our dinner, that was our plate. They were about that wide, and maybe about that long, and they lined them up and they put the crab and the fish on them, and the clams, and we also had plates of cedar bark too, and that was our plates. Maybe they were about that long and maybe about 2-3 inches wide. Everybody around put it on their plates. No spoons or forks. We just sat there and ate, and when we were done, we walked to the fire, thanked the Creator, and threw it in the fire. And after when we were done, whatever was left over, the grandpa would go, or Papa, he would go, what was left over, thank the Creator, throw it back into the fire, give it back to Mother Earth. Then he would save some and go to the water and thank the water for what they gave us, and thank the fish who gave up their lives for us, and throw it back in the fire. And that every time we ate, that's how it was. If we ate deer, it was the same thing. If we ate moose, it was the same thing. Fish, whatever came out of the ocean, whatever came from Mother Earth, and the fruits, whatever came out of the land, the carrots, the potatoes, was always respectful and thankful. And it was also done in our language. They had their little cultural ceremonies. But that was part of my upbringing. I remember sitting in, talking to my brother. We were playing on the floor by the kitchen. My mom and dad were in the kitchen, just sitting there, and there was a knock on the door. My brother and I stopped and looked at the door, because on the reserve, nobody knocked. They just opened the door and said, hello. And it was usually uncle, auntie, or some relative. And if my mom and dad say, we're in the living room, and they would come in. But there was a knock, my dad answered the door, and this man came walking in. I remember sitting there, I must have been about 5 or something. I remember looking at him. He had gray, thin hair. He had glasses on. He was kind of heavy. He had like a suit jacket on, dark pants, and he was heavy. And he came walking in. My dad told him to sit down, and he spoke to my mom and dad, and my brother and I, I'm still interested, but my brother started playing, and I started playing too. My mother became very upset. She started crying. My dad got very angry. And this white man, he got up, and he just walked out. And his name was Mr. Taylor. I never forgot that. He was the Indian agent. And Mr. Taylor, I remember his name because he left when I was about 16 or 17. He was our Indian agent that long. And he left, and my mom just called us and said, you kids go to bed now. And so we all went to bed. You know, and I found it very strange because she didn't come and tuck us in as usual. And I had a hard time going to sleep, but I did go to sleep. And I don't know how many days, weeks, month later, I know it was summer. My mom called us together and said, you kids put on your coats and shoes now. You're going with your father. And we thought nothing of it. We all gathered around. We're putting on our shoes and our coats. And we started walking down the street. And we thought we were going to our Ta's house because it was in the same direction. And my dad was walking. He had my 2 sisters' hands. And he's walking. And my brother and I were like a couple of puppies fighting and chasing each other and wrestling. And we got to my Ta's house. And my dad kept on walking. He turned up the hill. And we all knew it was up the hill. That's where a lot of children in our block went, and we never seen them again. And it was at school. And I stopped and looked at my brother. We looked at each other, and we got very quiet. And we walked all the way up to the school, which was 2 blocks away, up the hill. And sure enough, we got to the school, walked up the stairs. My dad knocked on the door, and Nun answered the door, and she motioned for us to come in, told us kids to sit down, Because I was scared now, I was last to go in. And I sat right there, right where my dad, she brought him in the office, and I could see my dad signing papers. And I didn't know he was signing our lives away. My dad came out and he looked at us and he said, "You kids be good now and listen." And he looked at Mother Michaela and he said, "And take good care of my children." And his eyes were really like he wanted to cry. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't hug us. He just turned around and walked out. No, I'm really scared. I feel deserted. I feel confused. I feel alone. I feel abandoned. And I'm just sitting there, and I just knew something about this place I didn't like. You could feel it and sense it. It was an old building, and my mom and dad also went to that school. It was called St. Paul's Residential School. So my mom, it was built in the early 1900s, so my dad and mom went through that school also. My dad went to grade 3, my mom went to grade 4, and that was very standard in them days. And I went to grade 8 there. I went through grade 1 to grade 8. But anyway, we're sitting in this lounge. 2 nuns appeared. One nun motioned for my 2 sisters to follow her. And the other nun motioned for myself and my brother to follow. I remember walking through this big dining room. With about 2 or 3 old tables, maybe about 5 feet long, all lined up together, a whole bunch of them, with benches on each side. I remember walking around looking at it and going up these old stairs following the nun. The stairs were all so old, they had footstep marks going up the stairs. The paint was peeling, you could smell it, and they didn't even have a light. I remember walking up, we got up to the top of the stairs, the nun told my brother, "You wait here." And she told me to follow her, and she brought me into this big, huge dormitory. I don't know, maybe 30, 40 or beds all lined up the same way. And she brought me to this bed, and she said, "You sit here. Whenever I bring you here, you sit in this bed. You come to this bed and stay here." And then she went out and grabbed my brother, and she brought him to another dormitory. There was 3 dormitories, little boys, which I was in, intermediate because my older brother was older than me, and there was a big boys dormitory. And they also did the same to my little sister and my older sister. They separated us. And that's how we were. I was there 8 years. My older brother was there 6 years. My little sister, 8 years. My older sister, 5 years. And I don't know how any of you are, but you maybe have brothers and sisters. You have that bonding. We don't have it. Although I love them and they love me, we're not bonded. You know, we don't have that closeness of being brought up that way because everybody in that residential school was separated. And I remember just sitting there, and the nun came in, she said, "Take all your clothes off." And so I got undressed and I sat there, and then she came and got me, and I followed her. I was naked. My brother was sitting in a chair, a wooden chair. He had a white sheet on him, and this man cut all his hair off, very short. And he was just finished. My brother was finished. He took it off, motioned for me to sit down. And my brother, the nun told him to sit right in front, stand right in front, and he was naked. And she told him to cover his eyes, nose, and mouth like that. And she had a spray can. And as his hands, eyes, nose, and ears, she started pumping that thing, and it started spraying him from his head down, all the way down, lift up his feet, in between his legs. And when she was done, she motioned for me to do the same thing. And I got up and I did the same thing, and she sprayed my body. And I could smell it, and it smelled like a detergent, and it made me dizzy. And I found out later it was pesticide. And that was the way to make sure, their way of making sure we didn't bring in any bugs. Although my mom bathed us and washed our clothes all the time, cleaned our sheets and our blankets. You know, when she mopped and scrubbed and mopped the floors and did the dishes and everything. But, and after I got that, I walked away, and she said, the nun said, and don't wash it off. And so I went, and there was, my clothes were gone, there was more clothes there. They were residential school clothes. And she said, do you know how to dress yourself? I said, yes. And I dressed myself. Then she came and got me, brought me down into this big classroom, grade 1, 2, and 3. And it was raining out. So all the boys were playing inside. And I remember looking around and I seen my brother. He was sitting against the desk and he was just looking at everybody. And all the new boys were sitting against the wall. And I went and sat with my brother, and you could tell they were new because they all had the white on them. And I went and sat with them. I looked and I seen all my cousins, my relatives, my friends who disappeared. They were all playing and they just waved to me and I waved back. And it was good to see them, but they didn't talk to me. But they just kept on playing. Then the nun came in, she rang a bell, and everybody quit, just dropped whatever they're doing, lined up against the wall. And we're all sitting there, all as new ones, we didn't know what to do. So the nun come and got me, the one who brought me into my dormitory, and all the clothes I put on had a number on it. I was number 3 for 8 years. Had it on my socks, my underclothing, my shoes, my pants, my shirt, my jacket. And the boys were 1, 3, 5, and the girls were 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. And the nun knew who I was, so she brought me in line, and she told all the other boys, you all have a number. Look who's in front of you and behind you. And every time I ring the bell or I blow a whistle, you line up that way. So they kept us separated because my brother, he was number 29 or something like that. He was way back. And they marched us into this big dining room. I remember going in there, filling up that one row, and there was a bunch of benches there, and the boys come in, filled up the other row. Then we all just stood there. And I looked around. Then I was going to sit down, and the boys stopped me, and we had to stand there. Then I heard the girls coming in. I looked up, and I seen my sisters, and I started waving. I started waving to my younger baby sister, and then my oldest sister come in, and then the nun come over, and she said, don't look around, don't talk. Look straight ahead or look down. So I put my head down. And then when all the girls came in, we all prayed to their God. We prayed for the food we were going to get. And then after we prayed, we all sat down. Then the girls came in. They had a big silver pot, round, really huge. And girl came, pushed it in on a tray. And one girl grabbed my plate, put it down, put it in front of me. And it was a round metal plate about maybe an inch deep, maybe about 4 inches wide, round. And I looked in it, and it was like maybe two pieces of meat, maybe a potato, and maybe 2 pieces of carrots and hot, greasy water. That was my lunch and my supper. Oh, I'll tell you what else I got. And then another girl came with a slice of bread with margarine on it. Then a girl came with a big pitcher, grabbed my cup, put it in with powdered milk. And that was my lunch and my supper for the 8 years I was there. And after we finished eating, we had to stand up and pray to their God for that meal that we received. And it wasn't enough. We were still hungry. It was very little. At home I was used to eating a regular meal. And we went to bed and prayed to their God, knelt beside our bed, got into bed, and the nun said, and no talking or playing. Go to sleep. Morning she got up and rang the bell. Nuns came in. We all lined up, went into their chapel, their church, prayed to their God. And the thing about praying to their God, we prayed in can't remember the word, Latin. When I left there, I could speak Latin perfectly, but they never ever told me what I was saying. I read the book in Latin. I could read it. I could sing all their songs in Latin. I knew I was praying, but I never had a clue what the heck I was saying. And that's how it was. And then my first day of school, we went in there, we were all sitting down, grade 1s, grade 2s, grade 3s. My older brother was grade 2, me in there, and I was 4 rows grade 1s, maybe 3 or 4 rows grade 2s, maybe 3 or 4 rows of grade 3s, but there were long wooden desks. And I was in the 3rd row, and there was a 4th row, and I was sitting there listening. There was these 2 boys talking, and they were speaking, and the older boy was talking to a boy around my age. And I was trying to listen, and the reason I couldn't understand them, they were from another reserve, and he was talking their language. He was talking to his younger brother, and it seemed like he was telling him what to do. And I just sat there listening, and the nun was standing right behind me, and she was listening too. And the nun walked down to the end of the row and walked up to them, and she had a yardstick, and she used it to point at the blackboard, but it had another use too. She walked up, and the boys were leaning over talking, just like I'm talking, and she lifted up the yardstick and started hitting them on the head, and they were crying. They were holding their heads, and then she hit one so hard her stick went flying. Then she grabbed him and started punching him. Then she grabbed him and dragged him in front of us, knelt him in front of us, and we're just kneeling. We're sitting there. We're shocked. We never seen this before. And she said, these boys were speaking their language. They are never to speak that language again. None of you. And if you speak that language in here again, you're talking to the devil. You're going to be condemned to hell. And that's how they taught us. We were condemned to hell 20, 30 times a day. We were stupid. We were ugly. We were savages. We were dumb. We were slow. That's how they taught us. By like this, with a stick. You never knew any love in there. And it was so different, so ugly. We had no control. We had to be there. And I was sitting there one time, and I don't know what day it was, and I heard my younger baby sister crying, screaming. And right away I looked, and there was the nun slapping her wrists, pulling her ears and her hair, and slapping her. And she was punishing her because my baby sister was left-handed. And she couldn't be left-handed. They wanted her to be right-handed. And she was 5. She'd been left-handed all her life. But she had to learn how to write right-handed. She had to learn how to hold her cup, how to feed herself right-handed. And I remember just clenching my fist, and I was going to run over and start punching that nun. But my brother and my neighbor, Rick, he was just like my brother too. He was my age. They got up and ran over and started punching the nun, saying, leave her alone, leave her alone. So the nuns turned and they ran over and they started beating on her, on my 2 brothers. But they accomplished what they were doing. They protected my little baby sister. And we took many beatings, because my brother took beatings for me. And I took beatings because I was trying to protect my little sister. And we never even knew why. A lot of times we were punished. We didn't know why. Didn't understand. I gave up my Squamish Nation language. I am starting to understand it again. And for a lot of us who were kids, we just quit. And it was because we knew what was going to happen if we talked our language. The nuns had a strap. Some lady behind me mentioned the strap. I don't know if any of you know, it was about that long. Maybe about 2 inches wide, about maybe a 1/4 inch thick, had a wooden handle with a string on it. And the nuns had to big long rosary down to their knees with a big silver cross. And on the other side, they had the strap. When we got the strap, we put out our hand, and they swung really hard, and your hand went down. When that one was done, you had to put up the other hand. I remember the first time I got the strap, I was playing, and the nun said, "Number 3, come here." I looked up and I went up. I didn't think anything was wrong. She brought me into that classroom and said, "Kneel down." But then when I knelt down, she forgot her strap. And she had to go up to her room and get it. Now I'm kneeling there and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And my uncle, when the nun left, my uncle come running in. He said, "Put out your hands." I put out my hands, and my uncle spit on both my hands, like that. And he was always teasing me. I'm thinking, what? And I was going to wipe it on my shirt. And he says, "No, you're going to get the strap. Rub your hands together and leave it wet." And he said, when the nun gives you the strap, you put out your hands and you put your hand down like that. And when the strap hits you, it's going to slide off, and it's not going to hurt. And then he heard the nun coming. Then he said, while she's giving you the strap, you're kneeling down, stare at her face. Don't take your eyes off her face. And then he said, and don't cry. If I see you crying, I hear you crying, I'm going to beat you up. He never ever did, but that was their way of saying, take what they give you, but don't give them satisfaction. I've seen you making you cry. And so, we held our tears for a long time. No matter how much they beat us up, no matter how cruel they were to us, we just stared at their faces. While she was giving me my strap, I just, I could feel my wanting to cry. A lot of times they would miss my hand and hit my wrist, and you'd have a big thing there. And my uncle lied to me because it was wet and that. It still hurt like heck. But that was part of his way of trying to protect me. The older boys, they went down the vegetable garden. We had a vegetable garden, and they stole. One time I was playing, and my uncle said, "Come here." We went, and he said, "Stand on this corner." There was carrots, potatoes, all the fruit. The veggies. He said, "Watch out for the nun." And I went and stood around the corner, and he said, "Don't yell. Just let me know if the nun comes." There was another boy my age watching the other corner. And 3 or 4 uncles, older boys, went there, filled up their shirts. Then he said, "Come on now." We went and we snuck along the wall of the church, of the school. And we went into the basement. And all the little boys were in there. They collected them. And they gave out all the fruit and veggies. And if there wasn't enough, they broke them in half. And everybody, all us little boys, we ate, and we were all so happy. And they'd say, "Shh, be quiet. Just eat it and be quiet." So we're, looking around. We're listening for the nun, because we know what would have happened if they caught us. They would say, "Where'd you get it? How'd you get it?" When the little boys would be so scared, they would say, "My uncle." Then the uncle would get the strap, and we had to witness it. And so we ate like that and learned how to steal just to survive. We stole whatever we could. It was always food. One time I was in bed in little boy's dormitory. I was sleeping, and this boy woke me up. He went like that, "Shh, come on." And I got up, looked around. There were 3 of us. We went, and they broke into the Mother Michaela's bedroom. And we went running in there, and they went running to all the candy and whatever she had, and we filled up her pajamas. And we went back to bed, and we unloaded it, and all we stole was food. And I remember looking around in her room, and her bed was there. There was this big trunk there, about that big, that high, really huge, and I pulled it out, and I opened it up. expecting to find something better to eat. It was filled with money. All just filled right to the top with money. I don't know where she got that money. And I called the older boy. I said, Stevie, come look. He come and looked. He said, holy. And he closed it again, pushed it back under, and we all just grabbed our food, closed Mother's door again, went to bed. And, next morning, once again, we passed out what we had. Couldn't wake up the kids, and flushed whatever wrappers we had, flushed them down the toilet, all the evidence. And I remember I was playing in the yard. I was about 10, maybe 12. And a whole bunch of us are playing. I looked out. And there's this little 3-4-year-old boy. He was just brand new in the school, and he had this American sailor's outfit on. American sailor hat and the sailor thing, clothing. I said, look. We all went running over to him. And I was the first one there, and the sister said, number 3, you take care of this boy. His name is Charlie. He was just brand new, so he didn't have a number yet. So I took care of Charlie, I helped him dress, helped him undress, helped to eat. When we went for a shower, I helped him take a shower, shampoo his hair. Well, we didn't even get shampoo. We had soap, and washed his hair, and dried his little body off. He was like my little brother, my baby brother. After our shower, because it took us so long, all the bigger boys got all the hot water, and we got the cold water. So I'd look at him, I'd be wiping his hair, and he'd be looking up at me, little chin quivering, so I'd brush him harder. Then I'd tickle his tummy and everything, and tickle his toes, try to make him forget he's uncomfortable, being cold. But he followed me around. Everybody called him my puppy. We'd be like that, little Charlie and me. And I talk about Charlie because he didn't make it. One night we went to bed. And I was in bed and I heard Charlie crying. I looked up and he was sitting on the bed. He was holding his head, rubbing his head. And I went over and I said, what's wrong, Charlie? He said, my head hurts. And I looked around and I was too scared to call the nun because she was very mean to us. But I just grabbed Charlie and I was rubbing his head. I rubbed it and I rubbed it. Then he finally went to sleep. I laid him down. I covered him up and laid down. And I was watching Charlie. And I finally went to sleep and I woke up in the morning. His bed was empty. I looked around. I went and looked in the bathroom. And I looked all over. I was really confused and puzzled. Then the nun called her, the Mother Michaela. She said, we rushed Charlie to the hospital this morning. There was something wrong with his head. There was something wrong with him. They had to rush him to the operating table. And we thought nothing of it. And we were playing, and then Mother Michaela called us in again, and she said, little Charlie didn't make it. He died on the operating table. And, they didn't even know where Charlie was from. They didn't know where his mother was. So they buried him on our reserve. We had big high mass, brought him into a church like this, little coffin. I remember sitting there looking at his little coffin, and just praying. Didn't understand it yet. And then when the bigger boys packed him up to the graveyard, his little coffin. Our graveyard was about 3 blocks away, and all the boys and some of the older girls packed him up. And then they lowered him into his grave, and I'm standing there. Then I understood. I'm thinking, I'm never going to see him. I'm never going to hear him laugh anymore, or hear him, cry. I never heard him cry, but I'm never going to see him run around. Then I started crying. Then the boys started burying him. And they marched us back up to the school. 3 nuns in front, 2 on the side, and 3 nuns in the back. Just like we were prisoners. Girls in front, boys in the back. And I was at the very end and I'm crying. And the nun came up to me and she said, "Quit your crying. Don't cry for him. He's gone now. He's in heaven. Don't cry." So I stifled my cries and just, that was the day. We weren't even allowed to mourn. And there was a lot of things that happened there. I remember my brother and I playing, and the nun came and she looked around and said, "You two, come here." We went there and she brought us into that vegetable garden. And there was 2 shovels there and she said, "Dig a hole." So my brother and I started digging a hole maybe about 5 feet long, maybe 2 feet wide and 3 feet deep. And we're digging and my brother looked up and he said, "Sister, what's this for?" And she said, "It's for garbage. Keep on digging." So after we finished, she took her shovels away and she said, "Go on now, get out of here." And today, I don't know how many of you read about all them graveyards. You hear about it. And it makes me wonder because some of the girls went missing. You know, and I ran away twice and the RCMP come and got me. Where am I going to go? I went 4 blocks away to my house. And they introduced me to these little handcuffs. They handcuffed me, put me in the back of the car, brought me back to the school, sat me in front of all the kids, undid the handcuffs. They left, and I put out my hand, got the strap in front of all the boys. They made me an example. This is what's going to happen if you run away. And I got the strap, just stared at her face. And all the boys were going like this because I didn't cry. They made sure I looked at them, and they knew. They were nodding to me saying, "Good boy, good man." Because I was tough and I biting my tongue and everything, so I didn't cry when I got the strap. But after that, you know, we ran away to Upper Squamish, and the police came and got us in too, and they handcuffed us together. There was only a train coming down to Squamish. Brought us on the train, all handcuffed together again. Brought us into the school again, undid the handcuffs, made almost like a big ceremony out of it. We all got the strap again. Then we went, and that was it. Don't run away or you're going to get this. And I remember sitting there once and my brother and I talking. Mother McCullough came and said, "Andrew, come with me." And he got up and they went up the stairs and I'm wondering what the heck's going on. So she brought him up the stairs. I waited a couple of minutes, snuck up the stairs, and there was my brother. Peeked around the corner, and my brother was in the big boys' dormitory. He was laying on his bed, and he was naked from the waist down. And Mother Michaela, she had that nun thing on her, so she couldn't see me. And I'm watching. My brother was naked, and she had the strap. And she went full force right on his behind. And my brother was just, he never opened his mouth. He was just like a fish on the bed, bouncing all over. And he seen me there. And he just locked eyes with me, and I'm there. And I was so traumatized, I couldn't even make myself go away. I couldn't believe it. And Mother Michaela kept on hitting him with her strap. And you could see the blood flying up in his skin. And she finally finished. And she had a cloth or a towel, and she wiped the blood off and put it back. And she turned, and I leaned against the wall. And she couldn't see me, and she had that thing there, and I was on the stairs, and she walked right by me, and then I began to hate. I hated her. I hated the nuns. I hated the priests. I hated the RCMP. I hated any white people, anybody of authority. Because I felt so little about myself because I was Indian. I was always reminded I was an Indian. I was ugly, I was stupid, dumb. Your culture is savage. Your culture, you're going to hell if you talk to the Creator. That's what I was taught. And that's what I believed in. it was easy for me to walk towards them, to try not to be punished. I learned how to hide. The boys would line up, I'd be in the back, behind somebody big. Don't look at me, don't see me. And I'm deaf in my right ear. The left ear rings constantly. I told on the nun once, she kept on picking on me. I told Mother Michaela. Mother Michaela's answer to that was, go get sister. The sister I was talking about stood her right beside her, and she told me, and I'm spacing both of them. She says, tell sister what you told me. And I'm looking up at sister, and she's got this, I'm going to get you later look. And I just kept quiet. Mother Michaela looked at me and said, go on, get out of here. So I turned and walked out. And I don't know how many nights later I was sleeping. I got grabbed by my pajamas. Everybody was sleeping. I got picked out of bed, and I'm getting dragged. And I'm wondering what? I'm trying to wake up, and I'm looking up. I'm on my knees. I'm getting dragged by my pajamas like this. And I'm looking up, and I didn't know who it was. I knew it was a woman. I could see her hair. She had pajamas on that went down to her ankles. And I'm looking, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And she got me right in front of her room, and she started punching me. And when she was done, she just shook me and she said, and stay there until I tell you to go to bed. And every now and then, I always knew that this happened many times. I don't know what I did, but I could always tell when it was going to happen. I'd be putting my pajamas on, I would lay down, and I would talk to their God, say, Our Father, Hail Mary, but their God never listened to me. Every night, when I knew it was going to happen, she'd come and drag me out and beat me up. Never knew why. What did I do? Tell me so I won't do it again. One night she hit me so hard I saw a flash. And that's the last I remember. She knocked me out. And she came in next morning, rang the bell, and I woke up and I was laying on my side. I never slept on my side. I guess she dragged me to bed, put me to bed, and covered me. And I got up and my pillowcase was stuck to my ear. I got up and I pushed it and it was full of blood. I guess she perforated my eardrum. And it was like that for a long time. It was always aching. I've had many operations on this ear, and I'm still deaf in it. Like I said, my right ear, it just rings constantly. I have false teeth. All my false teeth were pulled out when I was 13. The dentist came in once a year, and I guess he filled them, and I guess he got more for extractions. So he pulled out all my teeth. First time he pulled out about 8 or 9, and we couldn't even go to bed or anything. No painkiller. Go on, get out of here. We had to go back to school. Our mouth full of blood. We just put toilet paper in there. And that's how they took care of us. They just didn't care. We were children, and they were paid to do this, paid by the government. When I got older, I moved to the big boys' dormitory. Once again, all the beds lined up. One bed right beside the nun's room, facing this way, right by her doorway, and I was way in the corner. And this bed here, the boy was about 14, maybe 15 or 16, and he got up and ran away in the middle of the night. And we never thought anything of it. A lot of boys got up in the middle of the night, ran away. The older ones. Nun came over and said, "Number 3, move your stuff right over that bed." So I got up, went there, and I don't know, like I said, how many nights later I got a tap on the shoulder. I woke up, everybody was sleeping. It was the nun. She went like that. Shh, be quiet. And I looked around and trying to figure what's going on. She went like that, motioned for me to get up, and then motioned for me to follow her. And I'm 13 years old, and I followed her into her room, she put me into her bed and sexually assaulted me. You know, and she did this for 2 years. You know, and everything she did to me, they said, if you do this, you do that, before you're married, you're going to hell. And so I was condemned to hell. And every time she was finished with me, she made it feel like it was my fault. Then she would say, go on, get out of here now. And when I got up and walked out, she would say, and don't tell anybody. I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed. I'm not going to tell anybody. And I never admitted this until about 10, 12 years ago. I was sexually molested by a nun. And I know she did it to other boys because she moved other boys in special beds there close to her room. And all those boys are dead. Out of 40 of us that went from grade 1 to 8, there's 3 of us left. All the rest, 37, I don't think any one of them died a natural death. Suicide, car accidents, OD, alcohol poisoning, got stabbed, got beat up, car crashes before they were 40. When I got out of that residential school, they tore it down in 1959. I went home, my mom and dad were separated. Just my dad there, but he was an alcoholic. I think he drank a lot. He was never home, just me and my brother. So I wandered around all night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. A whole bunch of us boys, about 30, 40 of us. No parents to supervise. We went and we broke in stores. What did we steal? Food. We'd go in the bush and we'd make bologna sandwiches or something, and and eat and juice, and we drink. Then we go home and go to bed. I'm not saying it was right, but that's how we survived. And then I started drinking. A lot of us started drinking. My dad was an alcoholic. He had booze hidden all over the house. I mean, he was the only one that drank in the house. We started finding the booze and we started drinking it. We go with all the other guys, look what I got. And then we'd pass it around, get drunk. Then all my anger and all my hurt and my pains would surface. I'd feel good for a little while. Then everything surfaced and I'd start fighting. And I got in a fight and I didn't know how to fight. So I fought with everything. I had a club. I smashed a bottle and jammed it into a guy's chest. Lucky I got into his chest, not his face. I had a baseball bat. I beat somebody up with a baseball bat. I had a knife. I started packing a knife. And I almost killed my brother with it. I was very violent. And people kept on saying, what's wrong with you? I'd say, nothing. That meant, don't talk to me about it. And I went to jail. I almost killed my brother. I was charged with manslaughter at 15. I got 7 years. And they brought me to a place called Ocala Prison Farm. I remember walking in there. They said, prisoner coming in. Guy got handcuffs in. And nothing like hearing that door slam, metal on metal. You're walking in, you're handcuffed. And as tough as I thought I was scared. 15-year-old kid. I was a child. I didn't know that. I thought I was an adult. And I thought it was tough. But I went in there once again, take all my clothes off, take a shower, spray my whole body, give me clothes. All my clothes had a number on it. Go to my cell. Yeah, there was a cell. I'm locked up 23 hours. They let us out for 1 hour. Oh, except for when we got our breakfast, lunch, and supper, they marched us down and they gave us a tray, went back into our cell, ate in our cell, and put our tray down, and then they let us out 1 hour to congregate with everybody in our cell. And then they shipped me to a place called Haney Correctional. And I spent all my time there. I did 4.5 years there. The thing about Haney Correctional was all about rehabilitation. I could go to school there. Because of my age, I went to school. I could have took auto mechanics. I could have took drafting. I could have took woodwork, construction, welding. And they were trying to rehabilitate us. And I went to school. I made parole. Oh, I got in trouble in there because I wrote home and I said, I like it here. Because I could have took cooking. All the inmates went into the kitchen and they cooked. We ate normal food. We ate good food. And for breakfast, we got pancakes. You know, we got all natural food. We got toast. We got milk. We got coffee if we wanted. And it was normal, and I liked it there. And you're not supposed to like it in jail. And worst of all, you're not supposed to write home and say, I like it. And they brought me down. He said, so you like it here, do you? I said, yeah, I do. Okay. So they woke me up. All the boys got up at 6:30. They woke me up at 5:30. I went out and I mopped the big long hall till 7 o'clock. I went and got ready, went for breakfast, went to school. After school, I went for supper. After supper, I was mopping halls again, washing the walls. A month later, they brought me down. They said, "Do you still like it here?" I said, "No, I hate it. Go on, get out of here." And you know, but there was a lot of natives in there. There was 800 inmates in there, maybe 400 or 500 natives. I went there when I was 15. When I was about 18, 19, the gang started forming. And then when I joined the gang, I was just a scared kid. I did it for protection. When I left there, I was 20 and a half, and I moved my way up in the ranks. A lot of ugly things go on in jail. A lot of things you don't talk about. You know, they're horrible. How you treat other inmates. 2 emotions you shown there, happiness and anger. The ones who showed anything in between, crying, hurt, pain, they're the ones we picked on. You couldn't be human in there. You walk around like this. Yeah, right. Even if you're hurting inside. You want to cry because some member of your family passed away and you can't go to the funeral, but you're hurting. You want to cry, but you're walking around, yeah, right. Look at me. And that's all the only way you can act. But you picked on the weaker ones. You know, when they did my laundry, they pressed my pants, they shined my shoes. And to make matters worse, we sold them protection. If they don't pay me protection, we beat them up. You know, they paid us to protect themselves from us. That was part of every day, every dysfunctional order in jail. Anything dysfunctional, it happens in jail. And it's normal in jail. That's the scary part. People in jail, they should have been in a mental institution, including myself, because everything I did was abnormal. The guards were scared of us, and we were proud of that. And when I got out, I kept on drinking, kept on drugging. Oh, I turned to drugs after a while. I was an alcoholic. I turned into a drug addict, put it in my arm, swallowed it, and whatever. OD'd twice. Went into the hospital, doctor come in, he said, "Mr. George, one of these times we're not going to be able to help you." I said, "That's all. Yeah, okay." Went home, where are you going to go? Right back to your drug environment. No God in my life. No goodness. Because if you've goodness, I robbed my mom, my grandma, my grandpa, my brothers and my sisters. I robbed my wives. I'm not bragging, I've been married 4 times. I robbed them, I robbed my children, I beat my wives, I beat my children. And I'm not bragging about that. That's how I was. I had no respect for them because I didn't respect myself. Took me a long time, in and out of jail, impaired charges, 4 impaired charges, not bragging. And, you know, it was always just poor me, poor Sam. Nobody understands me. I went to court, my defense in court, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I was drunk. That was my defense. And the judge just said, don't you think you should do something about your drinking? And I got mad because he was telling me I had a problem with alcohol after I just admitted it. I didn't even know. When I was 45, I was married. My wife quit drinking in December. In April, I come staggering home. My choice of drugs was cocaine, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. 3, 4 days later, I'm all stoned, and she quit partying with me. She said, I had enough. I can't do this anymore. And she quit. So I was going to parties by myself, which I didn't mind. And I came home all stoned on coke one night. And she was in bed, probably awake, just pretending to be asleep. And I looked at her. And the coke made me very paranoid. And I felt this very ugly feeling, I gotta kill her. And I'm looking at her, and I turn around and I walk to the kitchen. I opened up the drawer, and there was this big butcher knife. And I picked it up, and I thought, and I'm glad there was this little bit of goodness in me. And I dropped it, and I closed it, and I went and sat outside. And it was Easter Sunday, I think. No, Good Friday. And I sat outside, and the sun was warm. And I just sat out there, and my wife at the time came out, and she said, what are you doing? And I told her. And she looked at me, and she said, I would have forgive you. I said, no, I was going to kill you. I said, I got to quit. I don't like being this way. I need help. And she stood up, and she went and made a few phone calls, and 2 counselors from our reserve showed up. And they talked to me and said, do you really want help, Sam? Do you really want to quit? I said, yeah, I have to. And they said, okay, come on. And they brought me to a detox in Vancouver. I didn't want to quit that soon. But they brought me there, and I was sitting in there for 5 days. Withdrawals. My body withdrawn, and it smelled so ugly. I could smell all that drugs coming out of my pores, and just sitting there and hallucinating. Oh, and I thought I fooled them. I brought Tylenol 3s with me. And before I went to detox, I dropped about 8 of them. And I got there, and I could barely even write my name. They said, are you on any drugs? I said, no. I lied. And I went there, and I got in their clothes, pajamas, and I thought I was being smart. I'd go to my bed and look around and take Tylenols. And I was sitting in detox, and my second and last night there, I noticed all these guys lining up, all these people. And the nurse was there, and she was giving them pills. They had to drink this, whatever it was, and they would open their mouth, and they'd come sit down, and maybe about half an hour later, they felt like I was watching them, they were kind of happy and everything. And I asked the guy, what is that? And he said, oh, it's to make sure we don't go into convulsions. And I said, what does it do? He said, oh, it makes you feel really good. And so I got in line there. I was the last in line, the nurse was there, and then giving them their pills, and I'm there. And the nurse said, you're not on this list. I said, but I think I'm going into convulsions. She looked at me, and I just stared at her. She said, okay. And she gave me that pill. The best thing I could have ever done. Because I went to bed that night. There was little men ripping my bed apart, pulling my hair. They were little guys. They were laughing, and I didn't know I was hallucinating. But I got up in the morning, I went to the bathroom, I grabbed all those Tylenols, I said, that's it. I threw them in the toilet, and I flushed them down. I'd like to say everything was beautiful again, but it wasn't. I kept on hallucinating. My body paid for it. But I suffered. I went without drugs, I went without alcohol. And I suffered for the way I abused my body. It took me about 3 years for all that, the drugs and alcohol, to get out of my body. But every day was getting better. And my prayer was, please God, please God, please God, please let me stay here one more minute. Please God, don't let me go crazy. Please God, help me. When I went to bed, please God, don't let me die. In the daytime when I was sober, when I was sitting in there, please God, take me, help me to die. I was so confused, I didn't know what I was praying for. But all my prayers were, please God, just for myself. But he heard me. I went 5 days of detox. They sent me to a recovery home somewhere in Creston. I'm still not sure where it is. All I know is 16-hour bus ride. Went to a town called Creston, a recovery house. And the Creator was giving me everything I needed. I got something there. And then they sent me to a treatment center over the island. I got something there. And I was still suffering, but I found out why I drank, why I drugged, why the way I was. And I looked at myself. It was very painful who I was, the way I was. But I wrote it down. This is Sam. This is how I am. This is what bothers me. This is why I feel anger. This is why I feel pain. And I had to write it down. And once I wrote that down, I had to sit in front of somebody, a clergyman, a priest, a person I didn't trust. And I told him. And he sat there and he listened to me. And I told him everything. And he told me, I wish I could remember it, but he gave me the answer. This is what you got to do. And I did whatever he told me. I needed help so bad. But when I left there, I knew I was a new man. I suffered, but I kept on changing. I adopted a 12-step program. I went to 4 meetings a day. I got up at 6 in the morning, went to a 7 o'clock meeting, went to a 9 o'clock meeting, went to a noon meeting. Maybe I went to more. Went to a 7 and 8 p.m. meeting, and went to a midnight meeting, 11 p.m. meeting. But this is what I needed. And this is what I got. And I changed. And today, 31 years later, I'm drug and alcohol free. People ask me, how come you come and talk to churches? Like I said, I was very comfortable when I walked in here. But instead of living in my uncomfortableness, in my uneasy feeling, I looked around. I looked at your beautiful windows. Wow, somebody put them together piece by piece. At least that's what I think. And I looked at the wood. Somebody chipped that out. I listened to them young men singing. That's beautiful. And I start concentrating on what I practice for, the positive. Never mind sitting here, oh, I don't like being here. I hate it. I don't like being with all these white people. I do. I like being with you guys. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. you know, that's the way I was, and I'm not that way today. The people who helped me to sober up were white people. I went to an AA meeting. Who come up to me, their hands out. Hi, my name is John. Welcome. And I'm looking there and I'm thinking, what do you want? You know, I was so full of mistrust. Then I found out all they want to do is help me. And they told me that, you know, Sam, you're going to have to trust somebody if you want to stay sober. They seen it. Because they were like me too. They knew what my problem was, and they made me get it out. I'm still a human being. I still have a lot of impatience. I have a lot of anger. My wife would tell you. But you know, she puts up with it. She's a beautiful woman. Now I'm a lucky man to be here. You know, I thought, how come I'm still here? When so many of my relatives, my friends died, I'm still here because I changed. I always end my talk with, they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were the seeds. Thank you.
Sam, I would just like to thank you for sharing your story with us with such courage and honesty and humility. It's not an easy story for us to listen to, because even though we weren't part of that Christian tradition, even though we weren't at the residential school, we're guilty by association. And your story reminds us that the residential schools weren't only something of the past. They also have their reverberation and their echo into the present. And they have their effect on people and communities today. And we do know that we are part of the whole effort of colonization. And for that, we have so much learning to do, so much listening to do. And so thank you for helping us understand who we are by understanding your story so completely and fully. So again, blessings to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's be together just for a moment of silence. And then, Bill, I would like to invite you to come forward, please, as you prepare to read your prayer. Bill, if you could just be here at the podium, and then Bill will use this mic. As the brushing happens, Gertie offering Sam the brushing as a way of offering healing and cleansing, so that the violence of the past doesn't continue into the present. And let's be together in silence. In the summer, as we were hearing the news of the bodies of children that were unearthed from unmarked graves in Kamloops and then other areas in BC. Bill Tate was so taken and broken by the news that he offered and wrote this poem called Green Tears, which he's willing to share with us today. And then, Tim, I think we'll just go from the poem right into the prayer. Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Can you hear me?
I think.
This is for the children. Look on this sad meadow. Each blade of grass nourished by tears of pain and terror. Oh, tread lightly here. These are children's tears. And no mounds of flowers, no countless flickering votives, nor hollow plaints of sorrow can ever erase the unrepentant, methodical sins committed here by zealots doing God's work. Could any true God allow such evil? While these grasses grow, this meadow of grief will bear everlasting witness to the unforgivable pain inflicted on these innocents. Tread lightly here on these tender green tears.
Thank you, Bill. And let's continue in prayer. O Holy One, so many tears, so much violence done in the name of what? In the name of you? It's hard to imagine, it's hard to believe, it's hard to accept, and yet it's true. We pray that there is forgiveness and healing after so many years of physical violence, sexual violence, cultural violence, emotional violence. We pray that your spirit of peace finds its way into our hearts and into our minds, and as a culture, as a whole, that we are able to walk your paths of peace. O Holy One with many names, intimate One who wove us together, who breathed the breath of life into each of us, who shaped our bodies tenderly with care, we thank you. We thank you with song for the grace of the earth we walk on, the arms of the trees that embrace us, the blessing of water that washes away pain and refreshes all of life. This blessing is great, and may we give thanks every day. We give thanks for truth tellers, for singers and writers and elders and children who use the clay of their lives to teach us. We give thanks for Jesus, whose way is before us. We listened today, and our hearts broke. So much pain in the world, and so much of it unnecessary. We release into the cosmos this pain, and we use it May we use the stories to weave each other closer, not to step aside. We take the hard path in this way, not the comfortable one. For we value true and good healing in your name. May we be changed by each other's stories. May we protect each other, child and stranger, mother and son, father and daughter, elder and newborn. May these lives be precious to us. May our caring be our testimony. O Holy One, like the mountain after rain, we are reshaped by each encounter with you, with each other. Call to us to care for one another, to reconcile and resurrect, to bear witness. May we walk the path with peace in our heart, the fire for justice in our belly, and the love of God in our every moment. And so together we join our hearts and our minds in the prayer of our tradition and our heart. Our Mother, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I realize that the time is moving on, and so for our offering, it may seem strange on a Sunday like this to ask for support of the church, but we do hope and pray that this is a community of sanity, that this is a community of peace, that this is an oasis of healing for people of all walks of life and every tradition. And so whatever you're able to support in the life of this community, we are grateful. There'll be greeters, ushers with baskets at the end if you'd like to make a contribution. These are other ways you can make a contribution. And for all of you who support this community with your energy, your time, your commitment, your good heart, we are grateful. And so let's close the service with song. The Chinese sage Lao Tzu wrote that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Well, after 400 years of colonization, the path of reconciliation is a journey of 1,000 miles. But every step matters. Without a single step, there is no journey. And so Sam and Gertie and Michelle, we thank you for honoring us with your presence today and for helping us as we take intentional steps along the path of peace and reconciliation. We are so grateful for your presence. And so as we walk into the world, may we do so aware of the one who goes before us, whose spirit is braided into our life and through us. And may that spirit bless each and every one of you, blessed child of God. And so may God be in your eyes and in your seeing. May God be in your ears and in your hearing. May God be in your mouth and in your speaking. May God be in your heart and in your understanding. May God be in your mind and in all of your thinking. May God be in your hands and in your working. May God be in your feet and in all of your traveling this day and always. Amen.